who submitted it to the AskProfWolff page of the website rdwolff.com. The question asks, is there a Marxist analysis of the American Civil War? Well, the simple answer is yes, there is. But an even more intriguing answer is the reason I know we have a Marxist analysis of the American Civil War is that Karl Marx wrote one. And here's why. After Karl Marx left Germany as an exile and took up residence in London, where he lived most of his adult life, he needed to make money. Like most refugees who leave their home country, they're in troubled economic circumstances wherever they end up. So when he got to London, Karl Marx was looking for a way to make money. And for a number of years, he got a job as the London correspondent for a New York City newspaper. The World, it was called. And it was just at the time of the American Civil War. And he began to write a series of articles analyzing the American Civil War for that newspaper in New York. So we know what Marx thought about the Civil War because he told us. So let me try to summarize it very briefly. Marx's argument has to do with thinking that societies are importantly different in terms of how they organize production. The United States was an odd place in the middle of the 19th century because the northern part of it was organized around principles of capitalism. Employers, employees. Employers got the employee to work by paying the employee a wage, and the worker came to work, got the wage, and did the labor. The southern half of the United States was a completely different economic system called slavery. In that system, the people who do the work are the property of the people they do the work for, master and slave, which is a completely different system from employer-employee. Now, the two parts worked together. For example, in the North, there were a lot of factories that produced cotton textiles. Where did they get the cotton? From the American South, where slaves planted it, tended it, and picked the cotton, which was then shipped to the North. So the United States was a society that put together a capitalist system which lived off of a slave system, and that worked out for the early years of the United States, both as an independent country and before that as a colony of Great Britain. But then a problem arose. As the population grew, as the economy grew, they kept pushing the Native Americans further and further west when they didn't just kill them. And now the question was, who's going to control the new land taken from the Native Americans? Places like Kansas and Missouri and those parts of the country moving west. Then a fight developed. The North didn't want those to be slave areas. They wanted room for capitalism to grow. The South had the opposite view. We want room for our system, slavery, to grow. And that put the two who had been cooperating against each other, and eventually they went to war. And it was a war in which the North said, we are going to get rid of this problem once and for all by getting rid of the slave system. And here's the interesting thing. It really was about systems because the key thing done by Abraham Lincoln as part of the Civil War was the Emancipation Proclamation, in which he declared that there is no longer any slavery, that the government of the United States will not enforce slavery, that slavery becomes illegal. An amendment to the Constitution was in fact passed to make it illegal. And in that way, the North destroyed the slave economy of the South by removing the slavery that was at its foundation. And for those that are interested, Marx found it doubly interesting that no compensation was basically paid to the slave owners. They lost their property. They had bought those slaves. They lost them because in freeing the slave, you destroyed the wealth of the slave system. And there was a system then, a kind of revolution in which capitalism overthrew the very slavery it had cooperated with. So Marx's analysis focuses on the class transformation, how the South was militarily forced into the capitalism that it has been